Hi guys, welcome to lesson 3 of our urbanisation topic. Today's lesson is called Urban Change, and we're going to look at the reasons, the causes of urban change and dereliction in the UK. So how have our urban areas changed over the years and how have they become derelict? So here are the key terms for today's lesson, so let's write them down. So this word, urban dereliction or decay, basically means abandoned buildings and wasteland. So you might see that as you walk around, especially around this local area. As we are in an urban area, you can see a lot of buildings that are just not used anymore. They're tumbled down, they might be covered in graffiti. You might get loads of land that is overgrown and just not been used for a very long time. Greenfield sites. Now these are a plot of land which has not been built on before. So it's normally in rural areas or on the rural urban fringe. Okay, so if you think about it, just a green space that no building has been built on before ever. And we call that greenfield sites. A brownfield site is land which has been used, abandoned and now awaits reuse. So it kind of links with the urban dereliction up here. So it's using that land that has been derelict and abandoned and to build something new on. And we call that brownfield site. And the last word is suburbanisation. And this is the movement of people from inner cities to the suburbs. So people that move from our local area all the way out towards the countryside, and we call that suburbanisation. Okay, so this is your quiz for this lesson. It's something a little bit different from what we've done before. Whereas you can see here, you've got 3 OS map extracts, A, B and C. And below, I'm going to put up some statements that I want you to match with each of these map extracts. Okay, so which extract, A, B or C, matches up with the statement? So all you need to write is the number of the question, the number of the statement, and then match up with the letter. So which one is it, A, B or C? Here we go. Okay, pause the video, give yourself about 4 minutes. Okay guys, so get your green pens out and let's go through it and see how well you've done. Okay, exciting. So yeah, map C here is the suburbs. How do we know that? Well, you can see here, look, this line that goes through here, you can see is like the boundary between the urban area here and then the countryside here, this open space. So where you can see on an OS map there's lots of white and just the contour lines, that is just open space or farmland. And here, as you can see here, all these like sort of beigey squares are the buildings. So you can see that the buildings are quite close together here on the left side of the map, showing that it's urban. And then on the right, there are no buildings and it's open. So that's the rural area. And therefore that has got to be the suburbs. A, yeah, that's the inner city. How do we know that? Well, you can see, look, big main roads, the A roads, the red there. Lots and lots of buildings tightly packed together. There's a hospital and there's lots of other roads there as well. So the indication that it's an inner city is that all the buildings are tightly packed together, showing that there is little room in the inner city. A cul-de-sac, yes, you would find that in B. A cul-de-sac, remember, is a road with a dead end that people live on, so you can see it here. And yeah, you can also get them down here in the suburbs. So either B or C is correct. Okay, where you get straight roads and terraced housing, yep, you get that in A. If you remember this terraced housing, they are the long lines of houses that you see in inner city. They're usually Victorian age, so quite old. Where lots of roads meet, yep, so you can see that happens in A. Lots of open space, yep, C. Roads become a dead end, so that's again, it's like a cul-de-sac, so that can be B or C. And the outskirts of the city is C. Well done, guys. So as I said, get your green pens and give yourself a tick or correct it. Okay, Year 9, so get your thinking caps on for this one. This image is very familiar to us. It is the River Thames, it's London. You can see the Shard here, the tallest building. So have a look at that figure. Look at it in detail. How would you describe the land use? Okay, so this is thinking back to last lesson. What is the land being used for here? And then have a look at the challenge. How might a river change the structure of a city so it does not fit the Burgess model? And that links back to last lesson too. So give yourself a good 10 minutes for this question, guys. Right, let's see how well you've done. Get your green pens out. So this picture of London, how would you describe its land use? Well, we know that this is the centre of London. Okay, so it is densely packed. Okay, we're referring to the buildings here. It is densely packed. The buildings are also high-rise. You can see the Shard, you can't get more high-rise than that. It's mainly business, so you don't really find much residential there, although there are some. You probably get some apartments in this area, but no houses, and well, not very many houses, and not many people living there. It's mainly used for business. And transport routes, you can see the bridges across the river, and roads and ferry as well. You can just see the boats on the River Thames there that take people and things up and down the river. So you should have said, what is the land use? It's mainly for business and for transport. Let's have a look at the challenge. So how might the river then change the structure of the city so it does not fit the Burgess model? Well, if you remember from last lesson, the Burgess model was the model that showed all urban areas that had a structure like this. So it went into like concentric circles where you had the CBD in the middle, then the inner city, outer city or suburbs, and then rural urban fringe right at the edge. Okay, so how can a river change it then? So if you imagine there's London with the River Thames going through the middle of it, how does that change the structure? Well, a river could change the structure of a city as it could separate the circle pattern, the Burgess model. The CBD is divided on both sides of the river, and this could stretch the CBD across a greater area, larger than the Burgess suggested. Okay, so, or expensive flats may develop along the river due to the views. So the last bit here happens quite a lot in London. Lots of really expensive apartments are actually built along the river, all the way down the river there. So whereas the Burgess model suggests that in the CBD not many people live there, hardly any, because of the river, people want to live near the river and get those river views, apartments have been built, and therefore that changes that structure. Okay, Year 9. What you're going to do now is a little bit of comprehension. So you're going to read this information in figure 3. You're going to have a look at the picture in figure 2, and you're going to answer those 3 questions on the left-hand side. So, figure 2 is a photograph of an inner city area facing dereliction. This is what dereliction looks like. Buildings that are just not used anymore and they are left to ruin. Figure 3 is an extract about suburbanisation. Remember, that's people moving from inner city areas out towards the countryside, to the edge of the city. Okay, so you've got information there. What I suggest you do is pause the video for 15 minutes and answer those questions. Pause it now. All right, guys, let's have a look at what you got for your answers. So get your green pens out and either tick or correct? So what is deindustrialization? So you should have written that it's the closing down of manufacturing industries in the inner city areas. So back in the Victorian times, when factories started to open a lot in city centres, that was the main industry, and that is why people started to move into the city for that work. And that's where all those terraced housing started to be built as well, to house people that were working in these factories. But as time has gone on, those manufacturing industries have closed, and we call that deindustrialization. Why has the manufacturing industry moved overseas? Yeah, why don't we do it in this country anymore? Well, basically, you can get it cheaper overseas. You can employ people to do the work cheaper, and we call this access to a cheaper workforce. And therefore, that can increase your profits. Explain 2 potential problems of living in the inner city. Well, we all know what it's like. It's very congested. That means there's lots of traffic, and this can cause a lot of air pollution. So the air quality is worse in the inner city. There's noise pollution as well from all the traffic and the densely put together buildings. You don't get much space. And also there's the nightlife. So people coming out of pubs and restaurants and clubs can make a lot of noise. There's limited green space for relaxing and leisure, so a reduced quality of life. There are parks in London. Actually, London is one of the greenest cities in the world. It has lots of parks, but compared to the countryside, there is very little. Small terraced housing with a lack of garden space and garages. That obviously isn't as great as living out where there is lots of space you can walk around and for your family to live in. Also, crime rates in inner cities are often higher, and this can lead to people feeling unsafe. Okay, that was great. So let's have a look at this now. So we looked at this last lesson, and it shows an OS map of Bradford up in the north, up in Yorkshire, and it shows you how the city looks like, what it looks like from the inner city right out to the suburbs. So we're going back to this word again, this suburbanisation, and it means the movement of people from the inner city to the suburbs. So have a look at this, have a look at the pictures surrounding the map, and identify 3 factors why people might be leaving inner city areas to live in the suburbs. So you can use the evidence from the pictures. So why are people leaving the inner city areas? All right, so let's have a look. Get your green pens out, guys. So the 3 factors that you should have written down are that, if you move further out, you have larger houses. So the inner city area, remember, has really small terraced housing and not a lot of large housing. So if you've got a big family or you just want to upgrade, you need to move further out. Houses in the suburbs are detached. That means you haven't got another house on your house. It's not attached to another house, which means you've got more space and more privacy. There we go, greater privacy. You can have front gardens as well when you're further out because you've got more space. You have driveways. Driveways are really good because your car is going to be safer if it's parked on a drive than on the road. Again, you've got a garage, more space to put your car, or just more storage. More green space for dog walking or just getting out and being healthy. Okay, houses are built around closes or cul-de-sacs. That means it's safer as well. You haven't got lots of traffic zooming up and down your road. Less crime as well if you're in a cul-de-sac, because that means that more people are going to be able to see what's going on. And there's going to be less congestion, as I said, because cars can't zoom up and down your road. Okay, so as well, you can do the reverse points for the inner city. Okay. All right, so challenges facing urban areas, the inner city decline. This is what you've got to look at. This is really important. So deindustrialization, that process of factories closing down in the inner city, has led to a negative multiplier effect. Now, what's a negative multiplier effect? So this is it. I want you to copy this into your books as we go. You might need to pause the video. So first of all, this is like a chain reaction, okay? This is what happens because this industry is closing down. So first of all, you've got factories in the inner city close and jobs are lost. This leads to people being unemployed, and the amount of people unemployed is going to rise. This leads to services suffering. Shops and pubs close because no one can afford to go there. And crime can potentially increase as people are more desperate. Therefore, local councils struggle to deal with the issues, and there is limited tax revenue. Remember, if you're working, you pay a bit of your wages to your tax, and that goes to your local government, your council. So if you haven't got anyone paying taxes, you're not going to have enough money in your council for things like litter collection or maintenance to keep the place looking nice, or even to pay for things like policing. Less tax, it means exactly that. Schools and healthcare may suffer, and aspirations in the area decrease if it looks horrible. That leads to educational outcomes being lower. So if the schools aren't getting lots of money, therefore that can have an effect on pupils and their grades. And that will lead to more unemployment because they're not getting the grades to get jobs. That will lead to the area suffering from a poor reputation and an association with crime. This can potentially increase health issues related to diet, drugs or alcohol. And then this process just repeats. Okay, and this is what we call a negative multiplier effect. Now all of this happens because that factory closed down. So all of these knock-on effects happened, and we call this a negative multiplier effect. So copy this down, guys, into your books. Okay, so here is your independent written task. This is the part where you're meant to spend the most time on. So imagine that you live in the inner city shown on the music clip at the beginning of the lesson. This was in Manchester. You must write a letter to your local councillor showing an understanding of suburbanisation and the impacts that this has had on you and your family. All right, so you need to write a letter and say what is happening to the inner city area due to suburbanisation. Here is the success criteria. You need to write at least 2 chains of reason explaining why suburbanisation has taken place. So why are people leaving this area? Explain in detail. Then you need to explain 2 chain of reasons explaining how your life has been impacted. So you can look back at the negative multiplier effect to help you with that. Let's have a look at an example. Does this meet the criteria? Dear local councillor, I have lived in this area for many years and it has changed beyond belief. Everybody has tried to move out to live in suburbs. The old way of life is no more. It all started when the factories began to close, as they moved out to the outskirts of the city where the land is cheaper. Also, new housing developments in the suburbs have attracted people, as the houses are detached and therefore offer more privacy. This has caused me major problems. Many of the houses around me are now derelict. This has resulted in them being vandalised. Can you help me sort the problem we are facing? So they've given points, really good points, and they've developed it there, and they've used a chain of reason. And they've done that twice in the first paragraph. But as we get to the second paragraph, they've given a point, but they haven't explained why. So therefore, The causes of suburbanisation in paragraph 1 are well explained. Only one impact is given and is not a chain in the second. This does not meet the success criteria. Therefore, guys, it's your turn now, so give it a go, make it really detailed. Off you go. There's also a challenge here for you guys that want to push yourselves a little bit more. In many inner cities, regeneration has now taken place. What do you think are the two main things which could help reverse the decline of the inner city? Explain your points. Off you go.